Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Germany once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. This is going to be review number 7 or 8 involving this brewery, if memory serves me correctly. And the beer that we're going to have a look at today is quite an interesting one. This is their latest release through Systembolaget here in Sweden. It's a style that I have had from this brewery before. The last one we had was quite interesting, and I've heard very, very good things about this particular beer as well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Bavaria in the south of Germany. We're going to go to the southwestern part of the state, to Augsburg, a little bit outside of the city to a wee place called Gundelfingen an der Donau. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Frau Gruber Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Phantom Lord. It comes in at 13.8% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. But it's also been aged in Heaven Hill bourbon barrels for 1 year. So yeah, should be quite interesting. But this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden toward the end of February 2023. I'm not sure exactly when this beer would have been released in Germany. But yeah, Frau Gruber, one of the really recognisable names when it comes to the more modern American style craft breweries in Germany. These guys are doing some awesome stuff. So yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye on and having a look at some of their beers if you haven't done so already. This is the second Imperial Stout I've had from them, and I think it's been about a year actually since we reviewed something from this brewery, so this review is a little bit overdue, I have to say. But let's crack on and see what this beer is all about then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Frau Gruber Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So go to the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you'll find this one in the German playlist along with many other things. And we are adding to that whenever we get the opportunity, and there's playlists from a number of different countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Frau Gruber Brewing once again. So, Frau Gruber Brewing, as I've mentioned to you before, was founded by Matthias Gruber and Enzo Frauenschuh, who were skate park friends from Augsburg in the southwest of Bavaria in southern Germany. So Matthias had previously worked for a company that manufactured printing presses, and he went over to Australia with work for a few months, and while he was there Enzo visited him and they went to drink craft beer because Enzo had studied at Weihenstephan in Freising, just outside of Munich, of course, a very famous brewing school, and he had also been working as the brewmaster at Riegele for about 5 years as well, from what I understand. But in 2013, they founded a craft beer wholesale business together that was called Liquid Hops, and this focused initially on importing Belgian and American beers into Germany. But this was intended to be a kind of part-time venture, but the demand for craft beers in Germany grew hugely, and so Matthias decided that he was going to make craft beers his profession. But the pair soon started homebrewing together, and they sold their beers at market, where they proved to be hugely popular, and this really got them thinking about taking their brewery commercial. So they combined their names and chose Frau Gruber, Frauenschuh Gruber, as the name of the brewery, and then they agreed with Markus Lohner to brew their beers at the old Camber Brewery, and this brewery is of course the one that is located in Gundelfingen an der Donau, just outside of Augsburg. But over the years these guys have continued to expand their capacity and brew new beers, and as of March 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 180 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. They do a variety of different styles. There's a lot of IPAs there. They do a number of Imperial Stouts as well, and various other things. So I do need to try a few different I do need to try a few different lagers and things like that from these guys, because it is mainly the American style beers that we've tried, but they have got a few of the more traditional German things as well, which I think would be very interesting to take a look at. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Frau Gruber for the moment. These guys, along with Sudden Death, are potentially the two German, more modern German breweries that you're most likely to find across the European continent, but there are many other very good German American style breweries out there that you should check out. But yeah, as I say, that's everything I can really tell you about Frau Gruber for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. There you can see on the front of the bottle, that is the standard Frau Gruber Brewing symbol. If we take it back a wee bit, you can have a look at the artwork on this one, which is very, very nice, I have to say. You can see we've got a lovely silver top there. I did actually cut a line around the bottle cap there and a little chunk so I can actually get the thing open on video without pausing it. But yeah, the interesting thing about this is that this is a half-litre bottle. Now, like I say, this beer was released as part of the Tillfällig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for in February, toward the end of February 2022. I think I paid maybe about 150 Swedish kronas for this, maybe a little bit less than that. Maybe it was about 120 or 130, I forget. I think 130 is about what I paid for this one. So that's about €13, about £12 sterling, somewhere in the region of like maybe $14, $15 American, just so that those of you watching in different places have an idea. But yeah, this beer contains, it actually has a little bit of oat malt in it, so it should be a nice kind of creamy Imperial Stout, this one. But yeah, like I say, I've heard very good things about this one. Aged in Bourbon, Heaven Hill bourbon barrels for a period of 12 months. So yeah, I don't think we've got anything else we need to say about the beer itself. We should just get it open, have a taste of it, and see what it's all about. So let's do this. The Phantom Lord from Frau Gruber Brewing in Germany. Let's just see if we can actually open this up. It doesn't look like it, unfortunately, so I'm going to pause the video and see what we can do with this. Alright, so I managed to take another little chunk off the plastic there, so I've got the bottle cap exposed. Let's see if we can get this to work. Yeah, there we go. Got it. I wasn't far away, I have to say. But yeah, there we are. I mean, just look at the wax. You can see on the bottle cap there how thick the wax actually was. Oh, I've dropped that. We'll get that later. But anyway, yeah, we now have the beer open. We can get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. Ooh, look at that. That's crazy. So, there we go. I think that is enough for the moment. Without spilling any. I think that is enough for the moment to have a little proper look at the beer. So there we go. Let me just line everything up again so that I'm happy for the video. And yeah, anyway. So as you can see, and as you would expect, this beer has poured a lovely, dark, ebony, rosewood type colour. Before the head disappears, I'd say that this one, we've got about 350 mils of the bottle of the beer out of the glass, and it's a 500 milliliter, like I said. But yeah, we've got it, and you can see it came out with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say quite dark, quite a dark beige head on this one. Kind of medium sized bubbles there, a few bigger ones on the edge of the glass too. But yeah, it looks very nice. You can see the head has just faded away to be a very thin foamy layer, and you've got that nice ring around the edge of the glass there. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, and a few little ones going up toward the surface of the beer, but that does look very, very nice. Yeah, it looks good, this one, I have to say that. But yeah, in terms of what you'd get from what you would expect appearance-wise from an Imperial Stout, there's nothing surprised about this one. When I shine the light through this, it doesn't even have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it. This one is black as night, and that's probably due to the presence of the oats. This one doesn't have wheat in it though, But yeah, this one is pretty much as black as you're going to get. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, when it comes to Imperial Stouts, because it's got, you know, some kind of black malt in the base, it's kind of quite difficult to affect the colour of the beer in that particular sense. But yeah, this one no doubt will be pretty damn nice. It would be very difficult to affect for the barrel in this one to affect the colour of the beer, to be honest with you. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation. 1 or 2 big bubbles there, a few little ones going up toward the surface. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this beer, but I did get a whiff of it when I was opening it up, and it's just one of these kind of really creamy, old school Imperial Stouts actually. So let's look at this. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, the aroma of this beer, it's nothing surprising, but it's just absolutely lovely. We've had some really nice Imperial Stouts like this in recent times. I mean, a number of these Imperial Stouts are, you know, a number of them are pretty kind of straightforward, but they're just really, really well done. You know, for example, the big bourbon barrel aged stout, I think it is, from Steegbeer, it's the one with the lion on the can. That's just a straight up old school Russian Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels, and it works beautifully. I get the feeling that this is a kind of beer like that, but the aroma of this is something else. This is definitely worth checking out for sure. So yeah, first impression of this one, for me, this has got a lot of very sweet, toasty brown sugar. It's a very sweet smelling Imperial Stout, I have to say. So on the yeah, from that perspective, I think this beer is very, very interesting. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful aroma. I wouldn't expect anything less from Frau Gruber, to be honest with you. These guys aren't going to release a beer like this without it being good quality. But let's break this beer down, describe the aroma a bit more in depth, and then we'll go for a tasting as we always do. But yeah, this is special. So the backbone of this beer, you can absolutely smell that lovely, smooth American oak in this one. As I've said in many a review before, for me, American oak is a lot smoother than European oak. European oak has a little bit more dryness to it, but like I say, a very smooth American oak in there. There's a little touch of vanilla in this one. You've also got a little bit of the kind of brown sugary character in there, a little bit of the bourbon sort of thing. Yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice from that perspective. The barrel isn't too dominant. You can smell a lot of the beer coming out of this one too, if that makes sense. Quite often with the barrel-aged beers, the barrel really can take over the aroma. In this case, it's definitely there, but it's not overpowering, if that makes sense. So yeah, lovely smooth American oak, a little touch of vanilla in there. You can smell a wee bit of the brown sugars, but yeah, aroma-wise, I do think this goes together very, very nicely. Yeah, I like this. I do like how this goes together. On top of that though, for me, generally speaking, this Imperial Stout is quite a sweet one. I'm getting a good little bit of sweetness out of this beer for sure. So you can smell there is a little touch of toasty, well-fire bread crust in there. There's a good little bit of, there's a lot of kind of, there's like a sweet sort of chocolate cakey backbone to the beer as well though. There's a good bit of kind of cocoa nib dryness at the same time. So it's kind of like a chocolate sponge cake, I would say, that I'm getting out of this one. So yeah, a little bit of toasty bread crust, like almost well-fire bread crust. Some nice kind of cakey notes as well. And then yeah, the way that goes together though is lovely. Above that kind of cakey note, there's a lot of brown sugar in this one, so there's a very toasty but still very, very sweet caramel coming out of it. In the middle of the nose, you also get, there is a little bit of treacle and a little bit of or molasses in there, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's got a lot of sweet kind of, the brown sugary notes in this one are quite crispy and quite sweet, I have to say. And the you can just kind of smell that this beer is very thick and very creamy. It's the oats, you know. I've had quite a few stouts like this before where the oats are very are just very prominent, and I think that's kind of what's building up some of the sweetness in this beer, to be honest with you. There's a little touch of like nutty pecan or almond in this one as well. But in some ways, as I say, the aroma of this Imperial Stout is very, very nice, but in a lot of ways it's actually very straight shooting. So that's interesting too. I don't think we need to say anything more really about the kind of yeasty or malty side of this beer, to be quite honest with you. I think we've covered that. Like I say, very straight shooting, but a very nice aroma. On the hoppy side of things though, on the hoppy side of things, there is a little bit of hoppy character present in this one, but of course an Imperial Stout is not the most hoppy style of beer. It's not the most hop forward style of beer, we should say. But yeah, you still get a little bit of that in there. For me, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness, a little touch of herbal character, and you are getting the kind of remnants of some floral and grassy notes in there as well. Bear in mind this beer has been barrel aged for a year, so quite a bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it, or at least quite a bit of the green component will have dropped out, and probably this has been sitting for a little while before it's actually been released in Sweden. So we have to think about this when we're looking at the beer. But I certainly do get the remnants of a bit of the green component with this beer when I smell it. So that's worth keeping in mind, I would say. But yeah, aroma wise, this is very, very nice, I have to say. So it gets a big thumbs up from me on the green component too. When it comes to the fruity side of the beer, it's a little bit hard to kind of pick out because it's so sweet otherwise, but I'd say there's definitely a good little bit of blackcurrant. There's some fig in there. There's a little bit of blackcurrant. Yeah, there's a good little bit of fig in there. There's a good little bit of blackcurrant. Some raisins as well, almost. But the raisins that really take a back seat. For me, it's actually more juicy and plummy. Bit of fig. And then, as I say, you've also got a wee touch of that blackcurranty character, or more than a touch of the blackcurranty character, actually. It's kind of oily, darker fruits that you're getting out of this one, which I have to say I do quite like. But yeah, fruity wise and aroma wise, I think this beer is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the aroma of this one. It probably is about time to dive into this one and see what it's all about. But yeah, this one is the Phantom Lord, a 13.8% bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout from Frau Gruber Brewing in Gundelfingen and der Donau, outside of Augsburg in the southwest of Bavaria, Bayern in Germany. Let's get stuck into this. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, there's something just very nice and very old school about this beer. Like I said, it's kind of very straight shooting in some ways, and it's just very, very nice. It's just very, very solidly done. And to be honest, these days when there are so many breweries out there, so many Imperial Stouts, you can't really ask for much more than that, to be honest with you. This one, I don't think there's much would surprise me in the Imperial Stout category anymore, but this one is just really, really solid. I've had a couple of beers like this. Like we had, the beer that this reminds me of actually was, I forget what it was called, but it was the bottle, the Imperial Stout barrel aged bottle that we had from Gamma Brewing over in Copenhagen. This one really reminds me of that actually. We had that a few months ago, and that was that really was very, very nice. Yeah, this beer really is quite akin to that, but my first impression of it is a very smooth, really creamy, and just really nice Imperial Stout, this one. So a big thumbs up to Frau Gruber for making this. This is good. The last Imperial Stout we had from them, I think, had a quite similar vibe to it, but it was infected, I think. So it didn't taste like quite right. Actually, that was the big problem. I forget what that one was called now, But yeah, this one seems like what the other one was supposed to be honest with you. So yeah, this is lovely though. Let's try and break this down and just describe the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth as we always do. We'll start with the middle third of the palate as usual. So yeah, middle third of your palate. You can feel that lovely smooth American oak character just forming the backbone of the beer. And as I say, I love the smoothness you get from American oak. So lovely smooth American oak character in the back of the in the backbone of the beer. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of vanilla. You do get a little bit of a kind of vanilla quality coming out of the wood there, but you can feel above that you have the kind of thinner layer of bourbon brown sugars, which I really do like. So yeah, aroma wise from that perspective, this one, flavour wise I should say, we're not on the aroma anymore, brain is not working. Flavour wise, the barrel in this one, it really just adds a little bit more kind of depth, and you get a bit more, I would say you get a wee bit more of the barrel the further into the aftertaste you go with this one. Like I say, smooth American oak, you've got a little bit of, you have got a little bit of kind of vanilla in there, and then you've got the layer of kind of bourbon brown sugars. But yeah, above that you actually start to get the Imperial Stout. So above the brown sugary notes you get a little bit of that kind of well-fired bread crust. You do get a little touch of that in there. But then the next layer up, you do get a little touch of a slightly rye bready note in there as well. But then you have a kind of sort of fluffy, sponge cakey type layer to the beer. It's like it really is like a kind of chocolate sponge actually. And further forward, that layer actually has a good little bit of fluffiness to it. But then further forward on the on that middle third of your palate, you start to get a few nutty elements. Like there's a little bit of pecan, a little bit of almond, and things like this. But the kind of fluffiness of the cake, I think, is quite interesting. You can definitely pick up some of the creaminess from the oats in this particular layer of the flavour. So yeah, the kind of creamy, bready, the sort of creamy cakey layer in this beer is really interesting. That's what makes it quite unique in a sense. But above that kind of cakey layer, you start to feel the brown sugars. So I'd be very curious to know whether this is just single mash or double mash at 13.8%. I'd be curious about that. One of the things that you always have to be aware of is that when you barrel age a beer, you sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel. And this one for me, it doesn't feel quite dense enough to be, say, like a double mash. I really don't think this one is a double mash. I think a lot of the mouthfeel is coming from the oats. And it's definitely not the thickest of Imperial Stouts I've had either. That's another thing to bear in mind here. And it's not a criticism, that, just an observation. But with this beer, it's still, for what it is, it's remarkably drinkable. Actually, it is a sipping beer, this one. Absolutely, no one's debating that. But yeah, it's just really interesting how everything goes together. But what I was getting to is that above the cakey layer, you start to get some of the brown sugars in this beer. So you can feel there's a sort of layer of leathery brown sugar. And when you start to get leathery brown sugars, that's usually always an indicator of a slightly longer wort boil. But in this beer, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure that I would equate that to being a long wort boil with this one. So yeah, you've got that lovely smooth, you do have that lovely smooth leathery layer in this one. And then above that you start to get the sweetness. So above the leathery brown sugar layer, you've got some nice toasty brown sugars in there. And in the dead centre of your palate, you've got that straight up. You've got a circle there, so you've got a treacle molasses layer, then a sweeter caramel above that, which which I also really like. So yeah, a bit of treacle and molasses in the middle, a sweeter caramel underneath, a bit more of a toasty brown sugar, and then a kind of leathery layer as well, which I really quite like. So yeah, the way the brown sugars in this beer go together, I have to say, is very, very nice. Like I say, in some ways this is a very, very straight shooting Imperial Stout, but I really like how it goes about its business. Gets a big thumbs up from me. And to be honest, I think that's everything we really need to say about the I think that's everything we really need to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. Let's go to the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate in this beer, you do get a little bit of that kind of sponge cakey build up in there. There's a wee touch of dryness, but the base of that back third of the palate, you get the woodiness once again. It's a little bit drier, as I've always said. More dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate for me. So yeah, absolutely a little bit more of a kind of a little touch of a more kind of dry, woody character in there. You can feel the bourbon sugars are also a little bit drier. Then you get you get the bread crusty note, which again is a bit more dry and a bit more bitter. Then you start to get the, as I say, then you start to get a more, you get that more spongy, cakey layer out of this beer. So you have that more chocolate sponge cake type layer, and it feels a little taller and a little bit more airy. And then above all of that, it's kind of interesting because in that border region and on top of the cakey layer, you actually start to get a wee touch more, I think, you get a little bit of a kind of cocoa nibby dryness. So that's worth bearing in mind with this beer. So yeah, I do get a little bit of cocoa nibby dryness out of this one. On top of that kind of sponge cakey layer, then above everything else, there's a wee bit of like a sweet brown bread and a bit of honeycomb and things. I always get honeycomb on the top of that back third of the palate there, but it has got this kind of rich like rye farmhouse bread and then a bit of honeycomb, and that for me is the kind of yeasty character you're getting out of this one. But definitely back third of the palate is the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together that wee bit more. So yeah, a really interesting combination of flavours in this one. Very, in some ways, a very straight shooting beer, but just really, really nice to drink and very enjoyable. I think that's the conclusion we should go for here. On the hoppy side of things then, like I said earlier, when you have an Imperial Stout, it's first of all not the most hop forward style of beer, but it also, it's not the most hop forward style of beer, but then when you barrel age it as well, the hoppy character is going to drop out, and then when you sit it in the bottle for a while, again, that effect is going to be, it's going to accumulate, So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, I do get a little bit of the green component there. There's a lovely little bit of smooth earthiness there. There's a wee touch of herbal character, and as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, the herbal character spreads a little bit. But like I say, there's a little touch of floral aromaticity to this one. Some nice grassy notes to the beer as well. So yeah, I think the way this beer goes together in that sense with the green component is nice, and it has a good little bit of complexity in there. So yeah, pardon me, a big thumbs up for the little bit of hoppy complexity that's in there. But like I say, not overly potent, I think is a good way to put this one. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then on the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in this one. Again, it's like that chocolate sponge cake. The base of that front third of your palate, you've got the smooth wood in there. You've got a little bit of so you've got the smooth wood in there. You've got a little bit of a kind of chocolate spongy character. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at those fruity notes. So, fruity side of the beer. For me, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee touch of, as I say, you've got a little, it's interesting because the fruity side of this beer for me is actually a little bit drier. I get a lot of blackcurrant out of this, and I also get a wee bit of sultana. It's not quite as, the fruity character in this beer is not madly complex like I've had in some of the other ones. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a lot of sultana for me, you know, dry white green grapes. As you move further forward to the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of, there is a little touch of figgy character to it. And yeah, when you are in the front, when you're in the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more of a kind of oily blackcurranty character that's in there. Yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really nice. So yeah, for me, sultanas, figs, and then a blackcurranty note. When you actually take the beer in though, you will get a bit more of that juicy plum and blackberry character out of the beer. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It really is interesting how all of that goes together. Yeah, the fruity side of this beer is, like I say, when you're actually into the aftertaste, it gets a lot drier and yeah, sultanas, figs, and black currants. But when you actually take the beer in, there's a wee bit more plummy and raisiny type quality to it. So yeah, that gets a big thumbs up from me actually. But yeah, overall, just a really, really nice Imperial Stout, this one. And I can feel the booze of this one going to my head a little bit, so I'm going to sip on this and enjoy it. Got more programming work to do over the next wee while, so yeah, this will be a nice wee sipper over the course of the afternoon. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, to be honest with you. You do get more and more of the barrel the further into the aftertaste you go. The more you let this kind of sit in your palate, you get the more of the barrel you get. But yeah, I like this one. I really do like how it goes together. So on the mouthfeel side of things, then for me, this is, it's definitely full bodied. Yeah, it's a full bodied beer. This one, maybe not. It's kind of toward the between mid and bottom range of full body. It's definitely not the thickest Imperial Stout that I've had, but it's not one of the thinner ones I've had either. But at the same time, it still has that German drinkability to it, which I find quite interesting. So yeah, kind of mid-range, full-bodied for me. Smooth carbonation, very, very creamy in its mouthfeel actually, which isn't surprising when you consider there's a lot of oat in there. So quite a creamy Imperial Stout, this one. Wee bit of dryness to it as well, but still really nice. A little bit hard to place the IBUs on this one because, you know, you could easily conflate some of the dryness that this beer has. You know, the cocoa nibs, the woodiness, some of the cakiness as well contributing to that. There is a good little bit of dryness to this beer, but it's not overly bitter. So, you know, if you combine that, my perception of this one would be it maybe has a bit of sort of 30 or 40 IBU level bitterness / dryness to it. I think that's maybe a fair assessment. But the malts, like we said, you've got a lovely dryness to it, you've got the smoothness in there, you've got a bit of sweet cakiness, you've also got a lot of brown sugar as well. It's just really, really nicely done from that perspective. There's a bit of oiliness to it as well, but mainly the malty side of this beer is quite creamy and quite dry, I would say. On the fruity side of things, like I said, when you take the beer in, you do get a bit more of a kind of straight up oily fruity character and sweet fruity character out of this one, but you start to get more dry fruity notes out of it the further into the aftertaste that you go. But overall, I would say that this is a really, really nicely done beer, this one, and one of the more kind of smooth, creamy type Imperial Stouts that I've come across. It really does remind me of that one that I had from Gamma Brewing a month or two ago. That was very, very nicely done. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This has been really interesting to try, and I can only compliment Frau Gruber for this. A very, very solid Imperial Stout. Potentially one of the best ones I've had from Germany. I haven't had too many German Imperial Stouts. So yeah, that's something we do need to explore a little bit more on the channel. But yeah, this one was the Phantom Lord, a 13.8% Heaven Hill Bourbon Barrel Aged Imperial Stout from Frau Gruber Brewing in Gundelfingen and the Donau in the southwest of Bavaria in southern Germany. So yeah, really enjoyable beer, this one, but probably one you should share with a friend. I'm going to sip on this for the rest of the afternoon, but I probably should have saved this one and shared it with a friend, but I was just very curious about it. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Frau Gruber as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review. Make sure you check out this beer if you get the chance.